Rob Brown here in Atlanta, about a mile from Brave Stadium, not too far from State Farm Arena in Atlanta. Brendan Martin's in Ocala.
How about them Gators?
Yeah, I watched last night, and I tell you what, I still hear the crying.
Show me how they're going to be beat. Somebody show me how you're going to beat those guys.
Somebody. I mean, they're a good second half team. They get pushed in the first half, but
that's their style. That's the style. That's all Todd Golden's style, baby. He's just
and I watched Arkansas having it's a meltdown. It reminded me of Memphis and Kansas in 2008 with 9 minutes left. Memphis up by 9, couldn't hit free throws. Arkansas up by 13 with 4:20 left, 69-56, and loses in overtime. That one's painful. Alabama looked just unbeatable last night. 25 three-pointers, man. SEC is alive. We got some big games today. We're going to talk about it. Take a picture with your QR code of the Twitter follow. So we are on X, at Rob Brown _ on YouTube, on Facebook, 7 channels simultaneously. And look, we got Frank Duffy. We got Doug Dean. We got Kevin Skarbinski. Scarbo knows. Going to be talking a lot of Sweet 16 basketball this morning. And Duke gets a win last night, 100-93. Dadgummit, watching Texas Tech play, they are really good. They never quit. Arkansas thought it was over. Texas Tech did not. So, guys, we all stayed up late. It was almost 1 o'clock this morning, Eastern time zone, when the Arkansas-Texas Tech game was over. They couldn't – I don't know why they picked these late times, but, of course, it's a 3-hour time difference for those people playing in that game out in San Francisco. But, guys, SEC has got one team down, still has 6 alive. How many going to make it to the Final Four? We're going to talk about that today. Good morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
And we get a break on the sleep tonight. I'm supposed to be at my hunting club getting to bed at a decent hour, and Auburn plays it. It won't be 8:39. It'll probably get pushed a little later, won't it?
Yeah, well, it's not helping anybody in the media, that's for sure. And when you have on either time zone, when I lived in Colorado, we used to bitch about the whole time being on the East Coast. So it's like, somebody's always getting beat up out there. Frank, where are you? You sound like the birds are chirping. It's like a beautiful day. Were you on the farm?
So I'm here in Big Canoe. I actually drove back from New Orleans last night. Of course, we're getting out of our apartment, as I mentioned to you guys, because they're doing a big restoration on the Mataba building. So I literally left New Orleans at 5 o'clock last night, got home at about 3 a.m. with a truck full of stuff, bringing it back here. So I didn't get to see the games. I had the wonderful privilege of listening to them on Westwood One, which is really great to do. I mean, it's old school basketball, listening to them. And I don't know what kind of picture they were painting, but I don't know what the hell happened to Arkansas. I mean, it was like I was watching a truck accident as I was going down I-85 in living color. I'm still blown away by that. And man, unbelievable. And look, to coin the old phrase of Mark Twain, my demise has been greatly exaggerated on Duke. Holy mackerel. Yeah. Did they open up a can of whoop? And let me tell you something, boys. Them boys in Tuscaloosa like playing some basketball. Lord. Holy mackerel, man. That ain't no football school no more.
They used up 3 games worth of 3-pointers.
Scarbo, I bet your keyboard was just on fire last night, Scarbo.
Kevin, I'm going to say it now. Because usually we're going almost 57 minutes into an hour before we even talk about football. So we will eventually get back to football in the Southeastern Conference.
Football? What's football?
Yeah, what is that?
They're not playing real spring games anyway. It's a glorified
they don't care
practice.
Anymore. They've caved to basketball, Kevin.
That performance, well, what Florida did in the second half to Maryland, completely predictable. Maryland plays 5 guys. They have no depth, and Florida is one of the deeper teams in the country. So that you could see that coming. There was no worry. Certainly, I'll bet you in the Florida locker room, there was no worry at halftime as close as the game was. And that performance by Alabama, you could also see that coming. because Brigham Young was the worst defense in the Sweet 16. They were ranked in the 70s in Ken Pom and defensive efficiency.
82nd ranked. Was
they
that after
play,
last night?
That's after last night. They dropped after last night, naturally. Yeah, they were in the 70s going into the game. But they also play a similar style to Alabama. You can't out Alabama.
Yeah.
You can't out Nate Oates. And when Mark Sears hit that first three early and saw that net dance,
set the tone.
What it started feeling good to him, and then it spread to Aiden Holloway and Chris Youngblood and Grant Nelson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that really, to a lot of the nation, that was a shock. Not to any of us who've watched Alabama play under Nate Oates. That was the perfect combination of their offense, a weak defense that went under screens, gave them uncontested looks from three. I don't know what Kevin Young was thinking, the
What
BYU
was that
coach,
defense?
There was no defense, really.
Yeah.
And so,
not getting
and that's not to take away from what Alabama did.
Not at all. No,
because you still got to hit the shots. I mean, they took 50. They were 25 for 51.
Yeah,
from three. Most attempts ever in an NCAA tournament game. Most makes ever in an NCAA tournament game.
Got to get out on the perimeter and contest that.
You got to run them off the 3-point line. Look, I'm not a math major or a mathematician, but I understand that 3 beats 2.
Yes, it does.
Apparently, Kevin Young missed that. Apparently, Kevin Young was sick that day when they taught.
Kevin, you sure Paul Westphal wasn't out there coaching last night? That looked like Loyola Marymount with Hank Gathers, those 135, 140-point scores. That Alabama took their foot off the gas late against BYU.
That sounds crazy.
And I caught Nate Oates. Post-game interview. Yeah. You talk about exuding confidence. He has no lack of confidence.
Oopsies. Lost Frank.
Frank come back, but listening on the radio.
Yeah, your Iron Bowl might be shaping up, Scarbo. your championship game.
Let me
good
take
so far. Although obviously Duke will be a much different animal for Alabama.
And
they
Auburn
will guard, and they will in that Elite Eight game on Saturday night. Duke will guard. They're long. They will not let Alabama get that many uncontested threes. But Alabama also can score going to the basket. So I think it's a fantastic matchup. Duke, even though Duke scored 100, let's not overlook the fact that Duke gave up 93 to Arizona. Now, Arizona is very good offensively, but they're not Alabama. So I think we're looking at another wild, wild West shootout between Alabama and Duke.
Let me put a great commentary, guys. Put another angle on that tremendous, scorching performance by Alabama last night. And Kevin said it. We should have seen this coming in that Ken Pom had BYU. Kevin said 70th. Man, can you imagine losing 12 spots in the defensive rankings in one game? That appears to be what happened, because this morning BYU's 82nd. They were 9th offensively. So Kevin's right, man. They tried. I don't know if they intended to, but they ended up trying to out Bama, this hot shooting Bama team. But listen to this. BYU had 50 points in the paint to Alabama's 16. It didn't mean squat, because Alabama dropped 75 points on 25 three-pointers. Now, I actually give Alabama more than a puncher's chance tomorrow when we play Duke. I think Duke has flirted with danger. At one point they were only up by 6 pretty late in the game, but to Duke's credit, they made the plays, and Cooper Flagg. Janai Broom probably should be glad the voting is done already, because Flagg did not hurt himself last night against a pretty good team. But Duke is, if I'm a Bama fan, my reality check is that I still gave up 88 points to BYU despite that. And, that happens when you're scoring at will like that. You're naturally less concerned about the other opponent making twos or making points in the paint. But Duke is number 1 in offensive Ken Pom ranking and 5th defensively. Now, what we're going to find out tomorrow is did Duke fatten up on weaker opponents? So far, March Madness has challenged maybe that assumption because they're playing higher quality teams. But so can Alabama still find a way to drain? I'm thinking 12 to 13 threes, maybe 14, and play elite enough defense to make it, down to the wire game. It'll be fun to watch.
I know one thing, that 6.5 is mighty juicy on the amount of points that Bama's getting.
Yeah, it is. I
juicy.
kind of like Alabama in that
Me
game,
too.
to be honest.
Me too.
Grant Nelson versus Cooper Flagg, Kevin.
Well, I think you're going to see Mo Diabate probably get the defensive assignment.
Yeah.
Primarily. It'll be a number of people. And look, he's going to get his. You're not going to hold him to 10 points or 12 points. To me, the key to beating Duke is not letting Proctor go off and Malawach, score 15 points on 7 dunks and a free throw. He's so good around the goal. If Cooper Flagg beats his man off the dribble, which he did a number of times against Arizona last night, and you go to help, he's got great floor presence. He had 7 assists last night to go with his 30 points, his 6 rebounds, his great all-around game. So, look, this is not going to be 62-60. It might be 62-60 at the half. It's not going to end up 62-60.
God almighty.
Kevin,
you're going to have to score minimum 90, probably 100 to win that game.
tell me if I'm reading too much in matchups or everything when you get to this point in the tourney, or if this is accurate. It looks to me like, dare I say, the SEC, it just means more. And by that, I mean, we had a season long beating each other up, and most of the teams we have left are fairly healthy, kind of shockingly, with the way we played physical all year. But it looks like the season in this historically best ever conference has prepared our remaining SEC teams. And Cal let us down again. There's nothing new there. He's had a great year and taken them farther than we thought a few months ago. But it looks like to me the SEC is just more battle tested. Is that what you're seeing, Kevin?
Absolutely. And you're seeing the cream rise to the top too. The best teams in the SEC are still playing. And the best teams in the SEC will continue to play beyond this weekend. I don't know if it'll be 2, 3, or 4 of them, but this is what. Look, Arkansas overachieved to get to the Sweet 16, and then underachieved when they had the game in hand to get to the Elite Eight. And if you've watched John Calipari coach or attempt to coach over the years, game coaching, I mean. You weren't surprised that they had that meltdown and they didn't handle the end of game situation. They didn't handle the end of regulation well. They didn't handle the end of overtime well. Could have used a timeout. I think he had a timeout left at the end of overtime when they were down 2 and they got a terrible shot. That's one where you might want to call a timeout and draw something up because they're not a very good offensive team. A lot of freelancing with the Razorbacks. So that was not a surprise. But the best teams in the SEC are still playing. And that's why I think we're going to see, I had 4 in my bracket going to the Final Four to start with. People laughed, said, no way. What about Duke? Look, Alabama can beat Duke. I have no doubt. It's not going to be easy. It'll be the toughest team Alabama's played in the NCAA tournament in the last 2 years, with the exception of UConn last year in the national semifinals. Alabama's been fortunate. They were fortunate they got BYU rather than Wisconsin. I think they would have beaten Wisconsin as well. But that was the ultimate good matchup for Alabama last night.
With 25 threes, they would have beat the Lakers of Showtime with 25 threes.
Kevin, let me ask you this guy, Swamp Fuel 120. Hey, Rob, for ratings only, who you have in finals? Kevin made us all on Sunday, March 16th, when he launched Scarborough Knows, pick our Final Four. I got Michigan State, Florida, Houston, and Alabama. And I have Florida beating Houston and the Gators cutting down the nets. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I wasn't a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. It was Al Goldman, the head of technical market analysis at A.G. Edwards, used to tell us on the Squawk Box every day when the market was going crazy, he'd say, everybody can't be right at the same time. So that being said, Cal, I still remember all 3 of my kids and I watching in a watch party on campus at Memphis against Kansas. Memphis is up by 9 with 2 minutes left. and everybody's just hugging. And I said, guys, free throws are going to kill them.
Yep.
And they lost in overtime. Looking at that game, I love Cal. Cal made a statement. He fired a shot over the bow yesterday. He's got the Hunts, the Tysons, and now Warren Stevens is on board. Get ready for the Hogs to go by the greatest talent in America, because Warren Stevens is worth over 7. The Hunts and the Tysons, God only knows. We all eat chicken sandwiches, and it all gets there by a truck. But that's still that was the meltdown of the tournament, and it was
Shocking.
the biggest. It was the second worst meltdown in NCAA Sweet 16 ever. And I'm not trying to say he's a bad coach, but that was painful at the end. It looked like they didn't even, Kevin, you're right, they didn't have a plan.
Look, Cal's never been known for his bench coaching, his in-game coaching, his in-game adjustments. He's been known for getting great talent and beating most teams with his talent. And when it gets to that situation where you've got to make a decision, you've got to decide whether to call a timeout, you've got to draw up a play, you've got to set up a defense, it's not his strong suit. And it really came back to bite him last night.
Yeah.
Yep.
It did.
If you're an Auburn fan, you feel really conflicted. You have to peek as fans. We can peek ahead. Coaches better not be doing that,
of course.
Because I am by no means marked a W in that column against Michigan. I think those two bigs could sort of neutralize what Broome and Cardwell do, and we're going to probably have to have scoring from the guards again, like against Creighton, and not just the second half. But I'm conflicted. Do you want to tempt fate and play Beard's Ole Miss team, which is surging, a fourth time, or do you want to go against Izzo? I think I'd like to see Bruce, if he's going to make the Elite Eight, have a chance to add an Elite Eight victory over Izzo, the great Izzo, to his resume. But you're running the risk of him having a coaching answer that sends you home. What do you think, guys?
Well, from a spectator standpoint, it would be fun to see them play Michigan State, simply because they haven't. And we've seen the Auburn Ole Miss movie 3 times now. But if I'm a coach, look, if I've beaten a team 3 times, it's probably because I'm better than that team. Yeah. I got better players than that other coach. And that's the case. Now, obviously, the last one was the closest, but Alabama's beaten Ole Miss by 30 this year, by 10 in the regular season. So there's got to be a doubt in the minds of the Ole Miss players. If that matchup occurs in the Elite Eight, there's got to be at least a nagging doubt in the back of everyone's mind in that program. Can we really beat these guys?
I think it's going to be Sparty anyway. We'll know soon.
What this Auburn game tonight at State Farm Arena, Auburn will have a lot of fans there. It's going to be played really late. I mean, supposed to be around 10 o'clock tip-off downtown Atlanta. If you don't have a ticket, it's not the kind of place you want to be hanging out outside late at night. I'm just telling you, there's some really
that knocks the olds out of there, Rob.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, I still see people down there trying to scalp paper tickets. Newsflash, they're all online now.
That's right.
I mean, Frank, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
Kevin. I think on a previous show we've talked about the question. It's overdone commentary about this March Madness being so chalky, meaning that the favorites are advancing, and how weird how goofy is it to call Coach Cal as a 10 seed a sympathetic underdog. They should have won last night. They had their chances, but the reason I think it's not an anomaly this year is look at the Florida Gators, which Brendan is delighted to do early and often.
Absolutely.
But they,
whoever the glasses, Doug.
Whoever the Walter,
I'm not taking them off till they win the whole deal.
Whoever the Walter Clayton Jr. of this year is, somebody's gonna in Big Ten or SEC is gonna go by him, and so it becomes challenging for the the Ionas and even the Xavier and Creighton and some of those teams. They're going to have to be creative at putting together a deep run, to the extent that talent is what gets you there.
That's the key. You got to be able
Florida.
to find. Yeah, you got to be able to find those guys at the mid majors, the Janai Brooms, the Walter Clayton Juniors, the Elijah Martins from FAU. You got to be able to go out and find those guys, and then you have to develop them. Not every Auburn knows with JP Pegues. He was outstanding at Furman. He was really. I saw him play against Samford a number of times. That dude was really, really good. He couldn't get any run at Auburn this year. He just couldn't keep up with the talent level around him. So it's not an exact science, but it is interesting how much of it's going on and how different coaches take different approaches to having to deal with the transfer portal while you're trying to win a national championship.
Yeah.
Preston Murphy is an assistant coach at Alabama. He's their de facto general manager. He doesn't have the title, but it's fallen on him this week while they're playing in the Sweet 16, now the Elite Eight, to deal with the transfer portal. He told the Alabama beat writer for AL.com in Newark on Wednesday that the Wednesday evening, he took 73 phone calls that day. 73 from people, either players themselves or people connected to those players wanting to transfer to Alabama. And that was before they scored 113 and made 25 threes. So that's a recruiting commercial. And that's why Nate Oates has been able, one of the big reasons, aside from winning, which of course is really attractive to all players, but the fact that you get to play fast and free in that system. You don't have to worry if you take a shot and shoot an air ball from 28 feet. You don't have to look over your shoulder and see who's at the scorer's table to come get you.
Yeah.
And that is one of the greatest recruiting inducements that you can give a player. We're going to let you play. And the only reason we're going to get really angry at you is if you pass up an open three rather than if you take a contested three.
That's the attitude.
Frank, what's the over and under on Alabama Duke?
I haven't looked. I just looked at the 6.5, but I'll tell you in 5 seconds.
230.
But you're probably not that far off, Doug.
Yeah.
174.5.
That's low. I'd take the over.
Taking the over.
Wow.
Frank
definitely
froze on that thought. Well, guys, I mean, the coach all right, Bruce Pearl, in his last 5 trips to the NCAA, he's gone home first weekend. Had one run in the Final Four in 2019. This year, what's the verdict going to be? What's the narrative going to be on Bruce Pearl if Auburn goes out tonight against Michigan State? And then you compare that to his pupil, Todd Golden at Florida.
You mean against Michigan tonight?
I'm sorry, Michigan, yeah.
Well, look, anything short of a Final Four is underachievement for this Auburn team.
I agree.
I don't buy it's easy. And I wrote this in my column for the Birmingham Lead yesterday. You know, it's easy to trot out the phrase Final Four or bust.
Yeah.
There is no way on God's green earth that a season in which Auburn wins 30 games, wins the toughest SEC ever in the regular season, spends 8 weeks in a row at number 1 in the AP poll could be considered a bust. So we need to be careful with our phrasing. A disappointment, yes. Underachievement, absolutely. Yeah. But it would not be a bust even if they lose tonight. But they will be forever known as the team that reached its ceiling in February, not in March.
Kevin, I'll double down, and I feel unfair when I say it, but I think it's the truth. With as well-built as this Auburn team is, the metrics prove it. They've done it in the toughest conference in modern era history. I think, and I'd say the same about Florida, the way they're playing. Maybe Alabama and Tennessee, people have their own opinions. But I think it's a disappointment, not a bust. It's a disappointment if Bruce doesn't cut the nets down.
Yeah, that's the right word.
I would agree with that as well. Because they have everything you need, as does Florida, as does Alabama. And I think Tennessee as well should go in that category. I think all 4 of those teams have the roster that can win a national championship and cut down that final net. So I think any one of those 4 teams that doesn't do it, and only one of them can, if it's not Duke, and that's the great thing. It's really now Duke against the SEC. Yeah, that's what this tournament's come down to.
Yeah, it really is.
Let's be honest.
You know what? By process of elimination, I'm going to introduce a controversial topic. I stand by the zebra factor.
Oh, Lord.
I will be watching the early games tonight as an Auburn guy. I get to be a fan, not always an objective analyst. But I want to see Pat Adams' crew in one of those early games, which will mean he's not calling the Auburn-Michigan game.
No Cavalier flashbacks.
That's a great point. Who is calling the games? Because you're
and James Breeding, that Mr. didn't know what a double dribble is. I don't think that crew has gone yet either, but they're on the list.
Well, there was a play late in that Duke-Arizona game. A clear hook and hold on Duke.
Yeah, and it got called on the other guy.
Grabbed the Arizona dude's arm, flung him to the ground. It should have been 2 shots. It should have been a flagrant one at the least, or a hook and hold, flagrant one. Arizona gets 2 free throws and the ball. And they did call Duke for a foul on that one, but it was a common foul. No, it wasn't.
They get all benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Look at the number of free throws Duke shoots.
The initiating flagrancy, that's a word, flagrant foul, gets Stevie Wonder's calling that one, if you will. And then the retaliation, which is nothing, the retaliation rarely goes in against Duke.
Well, to get me is, you're right about the officiating, and there's a narrative, and there is a narrative in the box of what they want to happen, and it is frustrating as hell. You've got to play great basketball and don't leave it to doubt with them. But I want to say this about Kentucky. They're playing Tennessee for a 3rd time. Now, nobody in the SEC in history has beaten Kentucky more than Tennessee. I think 82 times all time. Now, they've played a lot. What is Kentucky going to do against Tennessee? Mark Pope's team, how healthy are they? How good are they? He's proven one thing. He's a level-headed guy, and he's not over there pulling his hair out.
Well, when it comes to X's and O's, Kentucky upgraded significantly when it went from John Calipari to Mark Pope. Mark Pope's really good, especially on the offensive end. They are deficient on defense. Kentucky is. We saw what Alabama has done to them. We saw what Auburn did to them. We saw what a number of teams did to that Kentucky defense this year. That's the thing. Can Tennessee score? Because Tennessee is prone to those offensive lulls where they just can't buy a basket.
That's right.
And if they can avoid that, look, Tennessee's a better team than Kentucky. But as you said, Kentucky's gotten them twice already.
Yeah.
And there are going to be a lot of members of the Big Blue Nation in in that arena in Indianapolis tonight, for sure.
The ESPN analytics have Tennessee a 63% probability. So, and if you watch that during the game, you can click on the game with ESPN app. You can watch that percentage change in real time.
Yeah.
And that's like on the 4th and 31 in that fateful Iron Bowl.
Like the stock market.
Auburn was a 98% likelihood to beat Alabama.
99.9, Doug.
I was going to say that 98 was the slow on that last one, that last play.
Until the best commentary I saw on that was in the NIT second round. UAB was playing at Santa Clara in California, and UAB was down 17 points in the second half, and the win probability was 0.0000. A whole bunch of zeros and a 1. and some wag said it was at this point that Andy Kennedy told his players, if you don't get your asses in gear, we're busing back to Birmingham.
There you go.
And they came back and won.
That's Bobby Knight. The greatest motivator is the bench. Beats bench.
Yeah.
Bench transmits negative signal to brain. He's right. These guys have at some point in our case of Auburn, they were lagging. They were playing complacently. And Dylan Cardwell, in his own words, he cussed them out.
Splinters get your attention.
Let's hope that the staying power of that cursing runs for a couple more games.
Let me say something real quick about one of our sponsors. Take a break here. Winter Timber Outdoors. Doug, it's turkey season. It's closing in on us. You got to get geared up. It's not the Indian. It's not the arrow. It's the Indian. You've got to have the right gear. You've got to have the Migra copper-plated loads for turkey hunting. You got to have snake boots, ground blinds. You got to have the turkeys. You got to have that hen so that gobbler will come up there. The slate calls, the box calls. Doug, you like a diaphragm call. But you got to have the right gear. Poor preparation leads to poor performance. Avoid that. Take that off the list. Shop at Winter Timber Outdoors in Athens, Alabama. They're building a store a big one opening soon, possibly June, maybe earlier in Auburn. They're also looking in the Memphis market. They're looking in Athens, Georgia, looking Fayetteville, Alabama, Fayetteville, Arkansas. So they're growing in the footprint that is the Southeastern Conference. Huge store in Athens. When you go in there, it'll blow you away. Great gear, Sitka, Dixie decoys. They've got boots, over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns. Proud to be associated with them. Winter, timber, outdoors, Southern owned, Southern pride. Love them.
Yeah, and pro tip for people newer to turkey hunting, and
Yeah.
not that I'm a outfitter.
You are a veteran
but
turkey hunter.
Let
I
me
know
tell
that.
you, it's unlike deer hunting where you have a face cover or they use face paint.
Yeah.
With these turkeys, honest to God, you have got to get that camo netting to where your eyes, you barely even see any white.
Yeah.
When they get inside 30 yards, they can identify a human being like you wouldn't believe.
Doug, here's a question for you. If they could smell like they can hear and see, I don't think you'd ever kill one.
You would even the coyote predators would have trouble.
Yeah,
as good hunters as they are.
They're particular. You better cut the grass around where you hunt them. They don't like big.
But,
they don't like anything.
Everyone driving through the country sees turkey out in open pastures.
Yeah,
and they're big. But let me just tell you, when you're sitting, which is legally required, when you're sitting leaning against a tree, and they come in, the size of a male, a gobbler, is just awe-inspiring.
Yeah. I've got a big one in the den at the lodge. Tom, he's got an 11-inch beard. Beautiful turkey. But I'm going to tell y'all something. This basketball season,
unbelievable.
You look at calmness. Okay. And I think about this watching. I want to know, let's talk about this Michigan-Auburn matchup. We do know Michigan's got a couple of 7-footers. We know that KT Harrell played at Auburn for 2 years under Pearl, scored almost 1,200 points in 2 years. I think he transferred from UVA, and he's director of basketball operations at Michigan. We know Trey Donaldson is on that team. We know Mr. Wolf came from Yale, and all these stories are out there. They know how to pick Auburn apart. They know this. Well, flip that around. I thought about this when I was running yesterday. Auburn knows how to, get into Trey Donaldson. They saw Mr. Wolf last year. They know KT Harrell. So who has an advantage here? Far be it, 2 7-footers. Lots of people have 7-footers. Arkansas had a 7-2 guy, and they still lost.
I seem to believe, or seem to recall, that Creighton had a 7'2" guy named Ryan Kalkbrenner, who was a very good player.
Yeah.
And he gave Janai Broom some issues in the post.
Yeah.
And there will be some issues there, but that's a great point, Rob. I think that's overblown. Oh, they know exactly what they're going to do. They've been inside the Auburn locker room. Trey Donaldson, KT Harrell at different points in Bruce Pearl's career there. I think that's way overblown. And let's flip it this way. I guarantee you, in the minds of the Auburn players going into the Yale game last year, they didn't respect Mr. Wolf. They respect him now.
Yes.
They know what he's capable of. Now they have seen him. They have been on the floor with him. Dylan Cardwell knows what he's going to do, which way he's going to drop step. Is he going to turn and fade? He knows that now because he's seen it. So you don't have to convince Auburn that this is a good basketball team. You don't have to convince them of what Trey Donaldson's capable of in March. Remember NCAA tournament Trey in Birmingham 2 years ago when he went off against, I think it was Iowa in that second round game. He went nuts from three, and that's not his game. He's not an elite shooter, but he's capable. So they know what those guys can do, and they'll have a greater level of respect having been on the floor with those guys.
I think,
I like that.
We're spitballing here as far as how things will go, but if I know human personalities and motivation, those kind of dynamics, I think it's more likely that Trey, great player that he is, he's so quick. I think he's more likely to feel and be affected by pressure than the Auburn guards. And you've got a three-headed monster on Auburn in the backcourt, and I really like Trey. And they've got other players. I think that if you're an Auburn fan, what you're going to watch with great concern early is, if I'm Michigan, I'm going to do all I can to see if I can get 2 fouls early on the big Auburn bigs. And you hope that, at least selfishly, I hope that the refs are restrained and not calling ticky-tack soft calls early. If it's an actual foul, they got to blow the whistle. But I think both teams are going to try very hard to get to the second half with only one foul if they can.
Yeah, looking
on
at
the bigs, that is.
I like what you and Kevin have both said about Auburn. I mean, they all know each other, and everybody's always self-scouting, and so they're constantly changing. Frank, you look at the over and under on Auburn, Michigan tonight. One thing about Auburn that's true is they can beat you with a lot of different styles. They're not a retro team with a bunch of big guys that play with their backs to the basket.
And you saw that against Creighton. You saw the guard play.
They just adapt.
Yeah.
When the guards are hot, Auburn wins. When the guards are down, they struggle or lose.
And it's not so much like Alabama, who just bombs 3-pointers. The guard play on Auburn, in my opinion, is really great because they dish out a lot of assists. I mean, they'll drive the hole and then kick it out. So it's not just a shooting guard that they've got. They've got they've got floor generals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think Auburn's going to play really well tonight. They have to make sure they don't fall into that trap that they did in the first game and fall behind quickly. That, to me, I think Auburn getting out early in these games is vitally important for Bruce Pearl and his team.
Well, when you're the number 1 overall seed, you're supposed to win this game.
No doubt.
But Michigan's good, and Michigan won the Big Ten tournament. But Michigan lost its last 3 regular season games. They were worse and they got run in 2 of them. So this is a game Auburn is supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer it stays close, the more pressure climbs on Auburn.
Yeah, you don't want to let them hang around. You're right.
Oh no, kiss of death, Rob. 79% Auburn probability.
I'd love to know how they. I want to know. I want to meet the Geek Squad.
That
puts together these percentages and how they figure this.
Well,
by the way,
Vegas is saying 8.5, aren't they? Is it 8.5, guys?
Yeah, 8.5. Brendan put those lines up there. Brendan, if you could put the lines of he had all the point spreads for all these games, and God, I tell you, the graphics and stuff like that are so demonstrative.
Well, I think it's shocking that every bet I make is 100% a surety on my part. I don't take my wallet out. That doesn't work out that way. It doesn't work out that way, right?
That's right.
I don't go to the window unless I'm 100%.
Well, the power index or whatever, the probability thing, it's almost like shorting a stock. The way some of these bets are made, you look at a team, they're a 1% chance to win. All of a sudden, they're ahead, and then bam, things happen.
Hey, Rob, real quick, can you imagine the Big Ten commissioner, all the big Izzo, all the Big Ten big time blue blood coaches, Duke, North Carolina, ACC, if we get the following: Auburn, Florida, Bama, Tennessee, God, Final Four.
It'll kill them.
Oh my God. We will break the Big Ten. We've already broken the ACC. It looks like.
Yeah. They'll try to get a bill passed in Congress to stop it.
And by the way, you think it was a pretty bad day for North Carolina head coach when NC State just made their recent hire?
Wow,
boy, no kidding.
That's the hire of the year
Wade,
so far.
yeah.
Would y'all agree? Will Wade?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a strong ass hire.
Yeah.
It's a great time to go to the ACC.
He can have strong ass offers now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Exactly.
Kevin, are we going to have an amnesty day, you think, where people you can say whatever happened in the past and there's no repercussions? Because I've got some stories I want to tell, but I can't tell them yet.
Okay, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because that segues into something that's bothered me since last night.
Oh, shit. Watch out.
So that win yesterday for Alabama was number 11 for Nate Oates in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Since he's gotten to Tuscaloosa. That is, in my mind, and in reality, second in Alabama history behind Wimp Sanderson, who won 12 games in the NCAA tournament. Now, Wimp did it over 12 years. Nate's done it in 6 years. Nate's, unless something really, really cataclysmic happens, Nate's going to pass Wimp either this year or next year.
Yeah.
But The University of Alabama put out a tweet last night from their official basketball account that said Nate Oates, winningest NCAA tournament coach in Alabama history. And you know why they did that? Because in 1987, the Alabama team with Derek McKee and Terry Connor and Jim Farmer
Remember them.
and Mark Gottfried that won the SEC regular season, that won the SEC tournament, was a number 2 seed, got to the Sweet 16 and got run off the road by Billy Donovan and Rick Pitino in the 3-point shot in Providence.
Yeah.
But they did win 2 NCAA tournament games that year. However, between the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament, Derek McKee and Terry Connor, I think they signed one of those napkin deals with an agent, and the NCAA investigated. They found them guilty. They vacated the victories. So officially, Alabama only won 10 NCAA tournament games under Wimp Sanderson. The state of Alabama, actually, they sued the agents involved. I remember covering the trials. They got really a slap on the wrist based on Alabama was one of the first states to have an agent law that you had to be registered. You had to follow certain guidelines to be an agent in the state of Alabama. Kevin Porter, the Auburn cornerback, was involved in one of those cases. He had signed something with someone.
You remember the guy's name? Norby Walters.
Norby Walters was the mastermind. Yes. He was the quote-unquote mastermind of that operation.
Norby Walters.
Yeah, I can see his face now. He had white hair and glasses. Anyway.
Kevin, don't you think Nate has got to have a few more years for them to really
Well, wait a minute. My point is, okay, what do you do if you're Alabama? By NCAA rule, those wins were vacated. So you can't count them. That's even in the – but – from a practical standpoint, and Wimp Sanderson is whatever you think of Wimp, whether you like him or not, he's the winningest coach in Alabama basketball history.
Fear to plaid, baby. Fear to plaid.
6 Sweet 16s, guys. 6 in 12 years. 5 SEC tournament championships in 12 years.
The scowl.
Is it not a slap in his face somewhat?
Sure.
This was with less than an hour or maybe barely an hour after the game last night. They put that tweet out congratulating Nate Oates. And look, Nate Oates has done a great job, no doubt. And he's 11-4 in the NCAA tournament at Alabama. Wow. However, I know those games happened in 1987. I wasn't there for them. I was covering Auburn at the time, but those games happened. They won those games. And it is so far now in the past, as you said, Rob, should there be an amnesty? Should we give teams their banners back, that like Michigan and the Fab Four?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Vacating victories has always bothered me.
Fans don't care. They don't,
the fans know where they happened.
If Auburn lost if any Tennessee lost to Alabama in a big rivalry game and that later gets vacated, you're not seeing Tennessee fans going out pumping their chest. I wonder, Kevin, because I thought this when Saban was kind of at, let's say, the midpoint of his Alabama tenure, and he had 4 or 5 championships. One, I know Duff, one was at LSU, would have been more, but I digress. I wondered if my good Bama friends who are old enough were going to at any point feel slighted about the remarkable legacy of Coach Bryant, and the time came where I think and I give Alabama fans credit, they did not, take away from Bear Bryant's incredible success, but they were happy to say Nick Saban was the GOAT. And how do you get there? Just number of championships. So these, to me, I don't care what the vacating rules call for. Behind the scenes, when you're talking about the legacy of Wimp Sanderson and what Oates is doing now, which is remarkable, I think you've got to be careful not to detract from the success of Wimp Sanderson.
I agree with that. And also CM Newton. I mean, what he did, that 1976 taking Indiana, the 38-0 team, to the absolute max. But Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson is, Gary Harris from Tuscaloosa was on our show. He's on Thursdays. He said, Wimp's going to kill me for saying this, but he's 88 years old now. Guy's amazing. And I listen to his show a lot on Tide 100.9, him and Barry. I've called him on the phone a few times. My friend Rich Gray, I worked with for years. Rich lives down in Foley, Alabama. And I love Rich. And his dad and Wimp were friends all through childhood, grew up in Florence. But what I remember the most was basketball 40 years ago. the Plaid Palace,
Oh yeah.
Sonny Smith, Norm Sloan
Yep.
at Florida, Dale Brown at LSU. Hell, I still remember, Frank, that story. Dale Brown just coming in the Auburn locker room. 2 days later, y'all are up in Chapel Hill playing. Y'all remember
I was
Hugh
on
Durham?
that road trip.
You remember Hugh Durham, the old Georgia
Oh yeah,
coach?
Georgia, yeah.
When I was a kid one time in Memphis, he was the coach at the time of, I believe, Florida State. And they were playing Memphis, the old Metro Conference. And my friend Rob Ruffin and his late mother, Lindy Ruffin, lover, she grew up with Hugh. And we got to go ride to the airport with him in his limo or whatever like that and spend a lot of time with him that night. Just a cool guy. But you think about some of these coaches that we've had, let's not marginalize them. It was a different era, but my God, Dale Brown, I would still love to have that guy on the show because he was one of those personalities.
Fascinating guy.
Just yeah, and
I would want him on to hear his philosophy, not basketball.
Yeah, just his philosophy. And when
John
John Brady talks about him, how about that picture from a couple of years ago at a LSU Bama game? It's Dale Brown in the middle, John Brady and Wimp Sanderson sitting courtside. I mean, that's a cool photograph.
Hey, and Rob, I was so happy he got the court named after him. Now LSU did him a little dirty. They wound up adding Sue Gunther, who was the women's basketball coach at the same time when we were going through this political correctness bullshit. Wound up putting her name on there too, which I thought was just a slap. You want to give her something, put her on something else. You give her another honor and don't take away from Dale.
25 years that man gave to LSU.
One of your viewers, Rob, everyone, Swamp Fuel 20. I wonder who he pulls for.
Yeah. Hey, answer these questions, guys, when you see
How
them.
do you think referee calls have been during the tournament? I'm glad he asked that because Kevin has long followed, not that you're old, Kevin, compared to me, but you love basketball and you've loved it since you were probably 5 years old. In Pottsville, is that it?
Yes.
Pottsville, Pennsylvania.
Come on, Yingling beer. But this is a direct quote. Mark it, guys. Whoever gets the James Breeding crew in Sweet 16. Breeding was giving a speech, and the internet is forever, Mr. Breeding. We love you. I'm not accusing you of anything untoward yet.
Not yet.
But he gave a speech, and he pointed out, and I want Kevin to respond first. He said he believes when calling a game, and I think he particularly means the way you go about calling fouls. He said, quote, I believe in, quote, treat everyone fairly, but not necessarily equally. He added, treat the best differently. And that bugs the hell out of me.
That's
that
funky.
To me, is that saying protect a blue blood? Or now, he could apply that to a Janai Brim and say, I'm going to protect the National Player of the Year candidate. But I just fundamentally think that is outrageous way of a referee thinking, and if they think it, they should shut up and keep it to themselves.
They shouldn't even be on the court ever.
That's a fireable offense.
Yeah.
Although they're not employees, they're independent contractors. So that's an unemployable.
And this is the guy. I'm not going to let it die in CBS.
When did this happen? That's shocking to me, Doug. I was not aware of that.
I think it was pre-2019. The article I found this in, I'll send it to you, was in April 4, 2019 by a guy who was very critical of CBS and that officiating crew in Auburn, Virginia game. And they didn't spend all the time on the double dribble, which was indisputable, should have been called, would have ended the game most likely. But the low bump, Samir Dowdy goes up. Kyle Guy, he's a great player, but he does they're coached to do this. He pushed his legs out a little, hoping to get some contact. He succeeded at that. And Breeding called an unimaginable on a 3-point shot, a foul to essentially end the game. And to Kyle Guy's credit, he drained all 3 of the shots. But a lot of people were critical that the game had low bumps, had not been called all game, but they were called in that most critical moment.
Yeah. Well, what I remember, I got so jacked up at the end of that game. My son Max and I, we were watching it at a friend's house. We had to get in my truck and drive off. And when we did it, what I remember so well was we had to pull over to the side of the road. We were so excited. And when that call happened, John Thompson was on the radio. So I had to hear. And John Thompson, great coach, said, oh, whoa. You don't make that call on this stage. No way. He goes, that's ridiculous that you make it. And they missed the double dribble. And I tell you, that one hurts. That's
chicken
still,
bleed.
You got to get over them.
Swallow.
But I've known some officials, and I know y'all have too. And always remember, one, I was a student working on the sideline for CBS in an Auburn, Florida State game. And this is someone I'd known since I was a kid. And he was the head official for the Auburn, Florida State game. And he walked right by me and acted like he didn't even know me. And he told me later, he said, I hope you didn't take that personally, but I have to be agnostic when I'm on the field. And I said, Mr. Joe, I respect that. This is the same guy who told me about a wiry little old country boy from South Arkansas that Jimmy Johnson thought was going to be a rock star, Tommy Tuberville, because he would fly down from Memphis to Miami to officiate their games. So officials have to be agnostic. You can show no favor.
They're not. They're not.
I would fire my own children if they weren't doing a good job. I believe honors.
You gave the principle correctly, but I'm telling you, and not Nate Oates doesn't need some hack like me to advise him. He's a great coach. He's done unbelievable. He's changing the philosophy of how coaches are going to deploy. I can promise you. With the high volume of threes. But I would tell Coach Oates, kind of like Pat Dye at Legion Field, if you got 4th and 1, you better get 3 yards. If you better against Duke, you think CBS doesn't want Duke in the championship game, you better, or in the Final Four at least, you better make a 3 or 4 extra 3-pointers when you're playing Duke, because they're going to get a lot of benefit of the doubt from the officiating crew.
There's been no referee Robichaux or Thibodeau anywhere near Tuscaloosa anytime we've rolled in. I can tell you that right now. There's a lot of Billy Bobs, but ain't no Thibodeaus or Robichauxs.
But there may have been former Alabama football players who are officials.
Yeah, that's right.
The latest Dan Hurley incident in the tunnel after the loss to Florida last week, and what he said to the Baylor team.
Punkish.
Hope you don't get bleeped like we just did. Now, first of all, and Dan Hurley had just done a very heartfelt, emotional interview with Tracy Wolfson from CBS, talking about his team, how his and crediting Florida and how they went out against a really good team with honor. And he showed you a different side of Dan Hurley. And then that was Dr. Jekyll, and then Mr. Hyde emerged a few minutes later in the tunnel, and he's basically blaming the officiating in his own colorful way for losing that game, which is absolutely absurd. Florida completely took over the last 2 minutes and played like a champion. So coaches listen, these coaches know these guys personally. They have a mental running record of what calls they've made against them, what calls they've made in favor of their opponents. And there are absolute officials that they do not want to see. And I think this is the case in the old day. I want to get this right. Coaches have told me you could essentially, like a lawyer with potential jurors, you could strike certain officials and say, I don't want that guy on my games ever. And you were granted the ability to do that. I don't think that occurs anymore.
No, it doesn't.
I don't either, because referee Pat Adams, wow, he's
Kevin.
Would anybody vote to have Pat Adams do their games, or when he gets struck by every?
To be clear,
unemployable.
What I'm saying about Adams, and you have to read minds, but we can get away with that here. I can't anyway. Scarbo can. He's more an actual public figure, which I'm not. Except Kevin cannot be as easily sued for defamation. But I don't think Pat Adams is trying to help one team over the other. What I think it reminds me, I use the analogy of, remember, who can forget, Judge Ito in the OJ trial. He became so starstruck being on TV and was liked hanging out with the Dream Team attorneys. And that trial got out of control, regardless of whether you think who the actual perp is. And so I see Pat Adams get enamored with being on the TV camera, and it correlates with how many reviews he tends to call in a game, which, in my objection to those reviews, if they really are needed, great. But it gives a free timeout to the team that is fatigued and needs the timeout more.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Doug. It can strategically help one team or the other, whatever the decision turns out to be on that particular call.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'm going to let you be the TV mogul, ESPN, CBS, and your only
If only.
motivation is
I
what
wish.
is best for business. Do you agree with the following? You're going to have a great championship game and Final Four almost no matter what. But do you agree that because of the National Player of the Year angle, because of the SEC's dominance all year, that the regular season champion, who happens to have one of the two National Player of the Year candidates playing Duke, might be the most potent TV revenue matchup going forward?
Yeah, I think if you look at the bracket, look, Duke against anybody is going to gather eyeballs. Yeah, a lot of eyes are going to be on, because people are either going to love Duke or they're going to hate watch because they don't like Duke and the whole concept of Duke and privilege and private school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mike Krzyzewski, a little rat-faced Polish guy from Chicago, who once dissed me at Birmingham Southern for wearing sneakers with a suit when I interviewed him before the Birmingham Southern black tie.
Now it's all over ESPN.
Everybody does it now. I was ahead of the curve.
You were a forerunner.
I was a trendsetter. Who knew?
Yeah.
But I think I think the great conflict is already being set up. It's Duke against the SEC. It's Cooper Flagg against maybe Janai Broome or Walter Clayton Jr. or whoever it might. That's what's brewing, is a Duke SEC national championship game. In their minds, I think Alabama's going to beat Duke. What do I know?
The Iron Bowl basketball version would be incredible for all of us down in the South.
That would be, for me, the ultimate.
What I call that enough. I've posed that to a couple of my Bama and Auburn friends, and they really don't want it. And the reason I do, hey, Brad, that would be maximum joy or maximum agony. Do you agree, Brad?
How juicy.
Auburn, Alabama final.
Thanks, Rob, for having me in the green room for about 20 minutes eating on peanut M&Ms.
Sorry about the link. We had a link problem this morning. We were about 11. It was my fault, so my apologies. I'm sorry about that.
I mean, I didn't know I wasn't in there, though. I mean, I could see everything going on. I'm just sitting here, and I'm like, at some point in time, there's going to be a long enough of a pause. And, I mean, I heard everything. Guys, great stuff this morning. Great stuff. Speaking of great stuff, we got great deals at Landers Ford all weekend long.
Segway.
Month ends on Monday. 2.9 for 72 and F-150 plus big discounts, guys. We're down to one 2024 Lightning that comes with the Power Promise, 0 for 72. We got the new Broncos on the lot, guys. Air conditioning now in the back seats of the Bronco, which is something that my wife has complained about for 3 years. So we got them here. We're ready to sell. Rob, I was dying sitting on the sidelines over here on SEC sidelines this morning.
Speak freely.
Take a riff, Brad.
We would have loved that.
A couple of things since I've been waiting to get on this stinking show for all week. How was that not a travel in the Maryland game? Cost me so much money last weekend, guys. Colorado State won that
4
game.
steps.
3 steps. I was going nuts. I was like, how's that not a travel, and why is nobody talking about it?
Yep.
Bad beat. I don't want the Iron Bowl in the final game. The guys, the ratings of this Final Four are the best since the early 90s. And I think it's because teams that people care about are actually winning games. It's a great story when FAU or San Diego State makes it to the Final Four and the Cinderellas. But, guys, what we're learning this year is no one watches the Cinderellas. But when your teams are in the games, people are watching. I will eat a little bit of crow, but not full crow. I told you guys a week ago I didn't think the SEC was going to do great when it comes to the bottom half of the teams. Most of that was true. I will say Ole Miss showed up. They've done a great job. I think it goes to the fact that the two best coaches that the SEC has on the lower half of the teams, John Calipari and Mr. Beard at Ole Miss, have shown what they can do in the NCAA tournament. Interesting stat that I was unaware of until the other day. Only 3 teams this century have won west of the Mississippi the national championship in college basketball. That stat blew me away. Baylor, Kansas, Arizona. I was shocked when I heard that. And we're going to have it again this year after, more than likely. I mean, Texas Tech can still make a run. What a heck of a win of a game last night. I don't know why Arkansas shot so many threes the last 4 minutes of that game. But you know, I went to sleep when they were down 11, and then I all of a sudden woke back up thinking, man, this must be a good game on the other side of this sleep pattern I got right now. And sure enough, we're about to go into overtime. So great to be with you guys this morning.
Brad, you're the right one to ask this tongue-in-cheek question. Just in the spirit of fair play, you know where I'm going with this. Shouldn't the NCAA put a 23-point shot cap on Alabama? You can only score 20 per game.
I wish that we would have put that cap on last night so that we could have a few left for the Duke game. I mean, talking about Mark Sears goes from what he did the game before and then that game last night. I hope there's still enough left in the tank for Duke. Yeah, I think that's going to be one heck of a game.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean,
I give Alabama a chance.
Guys, we should have all put our mortgages on the over in that game last night between Alabama and BYU. Holy crap, that was a lot of points scored.
What was the over/under going in?
I think it was probably the 170 range. I didn't bet it. I unfortunately
easy money.
I bet the under in the Duke game, and that was a big messed up decision on that one. But you know, I think tonight's going to be some interesting matchups. I think that's a big spread in that Purdue-Houston game. Purdue's got a home court advantage in a football stadium, which I think throws everybody off a little bit anyways. It already is expected to be low scoring when it's Houston's playing. So I think that's a good opportunity to take Purdue with the points playing at home in Indianapolis. What a terrible shake for Houston to have that draw. I really wish the NCAA would move away from football stadiums for everything outside of the Final Four. I went to the regional finals and semifinals in Detroit and Ford Field. It's just a terrible place to watch a basketball game. You know, anytime you're in these
cavernous,
it's weird, it's awkward, it's hard to have a good seat. I mean, so much better for the Auburn and Ole Miss fans getting to go to State Farm Arena. They made the right choice having it there as opposed to Mercedes-Benz.
It's like when they had the SEC tournament in the Georgia Dome. It was just off-putting.
Yeah, especially when that tornado hit that night back in March of 2008.
Remember that? Yeah, horrible. When Georgia was making their run.
Yeah, Kevin, what Brad was saying and about these matchups, and Doug said it earlier, but it's matchups on game day. Talk about this Ole Miss Michigan State game tonight. Ole Miss doesn't have a lot of height, but they've got Padilla, who pound for pound is about the most fearless player in college basketball. Transfer from Virginia Tech. I mean, the ACC used to keep players like that. Now he's helping Ole Miss make a run to at least the Sweet 16.
Gutty player.
And look, people may have forgotten, but Chris Beard has taken the team to the national championship game. He did it just 6 years ago in 2019.
Oh yeah,
when Auburn got hosed in the semifinals, if that game had been officiated correctly, Auburn would have played Texas Tech and Chris Beard in the national championship game. And I will go to my grave believing Auburn would have won that game based on the matchups, based on the talent of each team. So this guy's not going to be afraid of the moment. His team's not going to be afraid of the moment. Ole Miss plays with a chip on its shoulder. It plays with an edge. That's the way Chris Beard coaches. You know, he's already had to address questions. Someone used the word fraud in a question somewhere along the line in this postseason. Yeah. Someone actually used the word fraud to Chris Beard about his team. Did they feel like frauds? I don't have the exact phrasing. And Chris Beard showed, especially for a guy who once had something to do with Bobby Knight as part of the Indiana program, an incredible amount of tact and restraint in addressing that question.
These reporters, somebody asked Bruce, are you panicked? Is your team panicked?
Well, that's a great reference, Doug. Wait a minute. Seriously?
Alabama.
That was a Birmingham. And look, that was a nice guy. He's a Birmingham television reporter. I don't know if he just got in out of his depth for a moment. But to use a word like panic to Bruce
for the number one overall seed
after the season they've had, the run they've had over the last 8 years. I mean, come on.
Well, Brad, I don't know if you saw the one where someone asked Chris Beard a question. It was a young reporter, and he said, "For a guy like you," and he goes, "For a guy like me," he goes,
"You people."
Yes. What do you mean, you people?
I would imagine Chris Beard has won a fight or two in his life, Brad.
And
Well, I mean,
remember,
that's the
Rick put. Go ahead, Brad.
Careful
Well, I
with
mean,
that reference there, Rob.
7 of the 8 coaches coaching tonight have been to the Final Four. I mean,
Yeah.
when was the last time
Yeah.
you had a day set up like this in the Sweet 16
Yeah.
to where you have this much experience, this much talent on the bench, and then the players? I mean, it is really remarkable how everything has kind of shaped up for us as basketball fans.
Yeah.
But guys, last weekend of the month, we got a lot of things going on here, and I gotta get going. I got a customer outside my office, but love being with you guys. Love this tournament, and it's gonna be a great weekend.
Hey,
See you in the championship game.
Like Mortimer told Randy, sell.
Brad, I
Good
want you to come
dudes.
back on earlier next week. Earlier part of the week, I'll bring you back on. Sorry about the link problem. LandersFordMemphis.com. If you didn't buy your last vehicle from Landers, you probably paid too much. But Chris Beard, I've always liked him since I started following him. John Brady told a story. God, John Brady's good on Wednesdays with us. He said, now I was at Arkansas State. He was at UALR, and they won 30 games that season. And he said, we were up on them by 18 at the half, and we had to hang on and win by the skin of our teeth by like 1 or 2 points. For a guy like you, that was, he's incredibly intense guy, man.
Was it Rick?
He's really intense. I like it.
Was it Rick Pitino, if memory serves, a while back was boldly saying Indiana should only interview one guy, and it's Chris Beard for that job. So, not that Ole Miss, he can do a lot at Ole Miss. And I think I'd be really hesitant to leave the SEC because of the flow of revenue and the opportunity. And Ole Miss fans will spend money if they think you've got a winner.
And why do you want to go to the Big Ten where you've got to fly to each coast
Yeah.
to play regular season games?
Yeah.
On a Tuesday and Wednesday night.
Kevin, can you imagine the great John Wooden, that, as Brad was saying, it's been so long that a West Coast team has cut the nets down. And just wouldn't have seen that coming during Wooden's era.
Well, that was one of those. It's not an asterisk by any means on UCLA's accomplishment, but much smaller fields in the NCAA tournament, true regional play in the first week. They didn't even have 3 weekends. There weren't that many teams in the tournament. So they were playing the likes of Long Beach State and other programs out west before they got to the regional, or certainly before they got to the Final Four. So it was an easier road. Now, again, it does not diminish what they accomplished. 10 championships. Was it 11 and 13 years, 10 and 12 years? I forget now, but it's incredible what they did. And to see what UNLV did under Jerry Tarkanian, I'll tell you what, guys, that 1990 national championship game where they beat Duke by 30 in Denver. I'll never forget being in the post-game locker room. I went to both locker rooms. In the Duke locker room, Bobby Hurley was sick, physically sick, and he looked a bit green. And this is a weird recollection, had the worst breath I've ever smelled in my entire life. Wow. He was gassed. They just lost by 30, but I will say Bobby was a stand-up guy. He was a heck of a player, much better than his brother Dan as a player for sure. Dan's the better coach, but Bobby was a better player by far. But that was one of the greatest displays of basketball I've ever seen in a UNLV team.
Yeah, Kevin, going into yesterday, Auburn had played 9 of these Sweet 16 teams. That's crazy.
And 9-4 record.
They were 9-4 against, 9-4 against the entire Sweet 16. That's more games against the Sweet 16 than any other team, and more wins by 3 than anyone else against the Sweet 16. Yeah. So Auburn has been tested as much as anyone.
Justin Ferguson, Auburn Observer, put out something I saw on X yesterday. He goes, just thought of this. All 4 teams, all 4 coaches in the South Regional at State Farm Arena in Atlanta have taken a team at least once to the Final Four. Pretty impressive.
It's murderer's row, guys.
That's what Brad said. Yeah, 7 out of the 8 coaches at work.
Thank you so much, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Y'all have a great one. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you.
Kevin and Frank, and we're going to wrap it up here in just a minute. That right there. Chris Beard, Tom Izzo, Bruce Pearl, and Dusty May. coming from Florida Atlantic. In his first year at Michigan, this guy's, I mean, he moves the needle wherever he goes. I mean, instantly has Michigan in the Sweet 16. I think, and Brad talked about it, the Cinderellas. We think that everybody wants to watch these Cinderellas, but the ratings prove otherwise. Kevin, I know you've got another show. Let them know about that show, Scarbo Knows, the Birmingham Lead, all the ways they can follow you. As always, appreciate this. And then I'll come back and wrap it up. Frank, as always, thank you. Get some sleep. You're a trooper for coming on this morning, okay?
You're welcome, sir.
Thanks, Rob.
You bet. Kevin, and how do they follow you?
Follow me on Twitter at Kevin Skarbinski, my website, kevinskarbinski.com, my new YouTube channel, Kevin Skarbinski Scarbo Knows. There you see the QR code.
Unbelievable content. Kevin, have a great weekend. Talk to you a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, let me say something before we wrap it up. Hewlett and Dunn this weekend. Get out there on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. I've got this shirt on. This is what's called the Glacier National Park shirt. They've got one left on the 50% off rackets made by Pendleton. They've got boots. I mean, you cannot, these Anderson Bean boots are fantastic. They've got them made out of everything imaginable that ever ran, flew, swam, or crawled. They've got women's boots, the shortcut boots. They look great. They've got tall boots. They've got snake boots from Danner. They've got these Danner trail shoes, people. Get out there, do yourself a favor. These are the trail shoes right here. Danner makes them. Love these things. They're so comfortable. You can even run in them. They're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you got to get boots, a pair that needs to be refurbished, they can take care of that for you, man. And all these boots, Filson, Barber, Schaefer, STS, Devil Dog jeans, Old South clothing, great looking hats, cowboy hats, ball caps, more duck heads than you've probably seen in your life. All at hewlettanddunn.com. For executive producer Brendan Martin, who is making all this stuff happen. Unbelievable. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay tuned over the weekend. You never know where we're going to pop up with a pop-up show. Thank you so much. And go to Sideline.live for all of our sponsors. Have a great weekend, everybody. Most often, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go make something great happen.